if it's something that's happening and it's usually relational over and over and over again throughout your life, those feel different and they don't make sense to us because we have a tendency to think like, well, I'm an adult and I have a job and I'm capable of doing these things. What's wrong with me? Like there's something, I must be not good enough or whatever because I can't function emotionally in my day to day. I'm struggling with interactions with other people, or I'm isolating more than I want to, or I'm scared of interactions or whatever it is. That's more of a complex trauma.
I held the weight of the world in my hands, but I let it go. Now I understand. I'm awake, I'm aware, I'm alive. I'm living my best recovered life.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. So thrilled to be with you here today. We have an exciting episode, and I have a guest that has been on the show before, and I am thrilled to have him back. Welcome, Kyle Miller, LCPC, and the owner of Nexus Counseling Services. Welcome back, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Damon. And I love that intro. That I'd never heard that song before. That's really cool.
Everybody loves a new intro. That is a Recovered Life band, as we always say.
Yeah,
Always fun. You gotta get people's attention, Kyle. People
yeah,
are so ADHD. I hate to diagnose. I'm not diagnosing, but come on.
yeah. It's me. I like it. It's new. It's fresh. It's a shiny object.
It's a shame. Exactly. I love that. I'm so glad to connect with you again. We've been
Yeah,
talking all month about trauma, and this is a big thing with addiction recovery. And with Recovered Life, we have all different types of people that come in that suffer from process addictions, but also mental health recovery because they feel that they want to join a community, have support, get information about how to deal with stuff. And when I found out it was Trauma Awareness Month, I thought that is it. I got to get Kyle on
hmm,
and talk about this. I
yeah,
have to talk about this, about like the whole idea of trauma and how it shows up, because I
yeah,
think a lot of people, you will see, oh my gosh, that person has trauma. Again, not diagnosing, but everybody will say,
yeah,
wow, that has nothing to do with the grocery store or
right.
whatever. That's it. And this person is freaking out over this and really triggered. And you're wondering what is going on. And there's so many people in addiction recovery that think, okay, well, I did the 12 steps, I went to therapy a little bit, and they never really got into the trauma. They're like, I'm fine now. I'm sober. I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine. I'm on
yeah.
medication. I'm fine. I obviously don't have trauma. How do you know? How, how do you know, buddy? How
Yeah.
do you know, Kyle,
You know,
if you got trauma?
and you know what? I will tell you, I think partially it's a cultural thing that it it's hard to identify. And I think the kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality stops us from actually being able to acknowledge it sometimes. But just to simplify it, Gabor Mate is somebody that I really like and respect, and his perspectives on trauma. And his quote is, "It's not what happens to you; it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you." And so trauma is like it's different for everybody. Something may happen to me that lights me up and I'm like, oh my god, I'm full of fear or pain or all of that. And it may happen to someone else and they are able to experience it and move on. So just being aware of what goes on in your body. I think the biggest thing is realizing, um, like the symptoms that we talk about with trauma is like, do you feel safe in your body? Do you often feel anxious? Do you often feel worried? Do you have anticipatory fear of things that might happen? Are you ruminating about worst case scenario? Um, and do you sometimes numb out unintentionally? Do you shut down in situations where you are not, where it's not appropriate to do that? Do you really have a low self-esteem and have a tendency to beat yourself up? Like those are all some of the like signs of trauma being in our body. Now the physical signs as well are like, if you have sleep issues, these are kind of also go along with depression, like low energy, physical pain. There's actually a correlation now where the body responds, and in your body, like a lot of our issues in our stomach and our gut, they're talking about a second brain in your gut. It's communicating, right? So a lot of our issues sometimes stem from that. And so, yeah, like all of it. I think the biggest thing is realizing that there are different types of trauma. And I know that it's also for a lot of people, it's like, "Oh, that word's overused now." I think that we're actually realizing that it's more prevalent than we've
Yes,
ever thought before.
I agree.
We so yeah, sorry, I'll
Well,
pause.
not getting your no, no, it's good. Not getting, but let's be clear, because some people will come in and are like, you know what? I wanted the sugar-free caramel latte, and I got the chocolate caramel latte, and I have trauma. Like, that's not what we're talking, right? No,
Right.
you just didn't
No.
get the latte you wanted. That's not
Yes.
trauma. Now,
Yes.
it could have triggered
Yeah.
trauma that maybe you don't feel that you
It
deserve
There you
the
go.
one you
Yes,
want, right?
exactly. Another saying is if it's hysterical, it's historical, right? So if you're
Ah, I
having
love that. I love
an
that.
oversized reaction to something, that's not about what's happening in the moment. It was what happened in your life, right? So if you are having a big response to that, I mean, I guess it could be that you're also a very sheltered person and maybe spoiled, but that oversized response in our relation to other people is typically a historical response. And so that's why I think in my work with people, I'm always going back to their history. And it's not, I don't want to stay there, but we need to explore it so that we can learn to let go of it, and and then be able to focus on the future.
So many people that are in recovery have a parent or guardian that was an alcoholic or an addict. Or I would even say people that are in recovery from a mental health disease or disorder, same thing. They had a
Yeah.
parent, right? So
Yeah.
we're seeing there's obviously some genetic stuff.
Yes.
How does that work in? Because I made a statement the other day on the live, and I said, it's my opinion that anybody who grew up in a household that had an active alcoholic parent in there, or maybe even an older sibling, right? That just that alone, really everybody has a form of trauma.
Yeah.
If they've had that, because you're gonna, and that obviously we talk a lot about codependency being the same energetic pattern as addiction. You'll have one kid who does everything quote right, but isn't
Hmm.
super codependent, and you'll have another one that is super angry and
Yeah.
lashes out and rebelled. You have another person that's an alcoholic, right? Like, so it's almost the same energetic pattern as I see that happens. So can we talk about that a little bit? If so many people come in to addiction recovery having had a parent, how do they start to unpack that maybe the big overreaction, and it may be not outwardly but inwardly,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's happening, could this be linked to that?
Yeah. There's a lot of research coming out now about generational trauma. They talk about epigenetics,
Yeah.
and so you can have a relative from your history. They show that the stress can be passed down generations, and so you had, let's say, if your grandparent or great grandparent was a Holocaust survivor, and but you've had all of your needs met and all of that, and you're stressed, like sometimes if the environment that you're in doesn't promote that stress or that struggle that you're going through, there is a possibility, which I think it makes it even more complicated, right? Like, oh, what do I like? We all want to figure it out. That's where our brains are designed to do. It's why we like reality TV so much, is because or the crime shows, because we're trying to figure out, like, how could this happen? Um, you know, but I think really what we need to think about is, like, going back to what is going on in your body. What are the signs and symptoms that you are having, and why? Uh, and then looking at the comparison to others is always a trap, right? So, and oftentimes, um I talk to a lot of people, and I've had this myself. I'm like, well, in comparison to this person, my life wasn't that bad, so why am I complaining? This doesn't make sense. Or if and I will say, if you have a sorry, I almost went off of your question. If you have a parent who is had an addiction, or if they had a mental health issue, we do. I think it is my opinion is that it is a part of that possible epigenetics. Like,
Yes.
it's just something that some sort of gene gets passed down, or something that makes you a little more susceptible to it, or it can make you, if you see it and you don't have that gene, you may be like, really hyper aware that I don't want that, right? Like, it's that the trauma. But what I will say is, if you do have a parent or a family member or someone in your life that's really close to you, and they have an addiction, if it's somebody in your family of origin, you will end up, like, it takes you away from your own self development. You can't focus on, who am I and what do I want to do, and because in some way that person can't fully be with you, right?
Yeah.
And so you're paying attention to them. How do I adapt? How do I shift? What do I do in this situation? How do I live, and how do I be okay, right? And some
Yeah, and this whole aligning of emotions, I see a lot. Like, this whole well, if they're not okay, we're not okay,
Yeah.
which is a very distorted view of the world, because you could be totally okay, but somebody has a weird reaction, it triggers you. Well, then we're not, like, it's not okay. And I got to talk about this because I see different types of people through my journey of recovery. And I overheard a conversation the other day where this person had the perfect shirt, the perfect casual shorts, the perfect flip flops, the perfect, like, not a hair out of place, talking about how they had been in a car accident. I was at a coffee shop talking about that they'd been in a car accident, and that it was unacceptable, and that for 20 years he had never, had anything, that he controls every single thing. And I'm
uh
saying to myself, I'm like, "Oh, the illusion of control,
yeah.
that's trauma." Like,
Yeah.
why do you feel that, like, life wouldn't, it sucks that you got in a car accident, but it's lifing.
Yeah.
This inability to be able to take life as life comes, that somehow everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
What is this about? I mean, because I know a lot of people, I've had this in my life, that it's like, "Oh, I'm not doing enough." It's like, "Well, actually, I'm doing too much,"
Mm.
Letting
Yep.
go. Like, most of my spiritual practice is letting go. Like,
Yeah.
just letting go. I did what I could do, and I can't do anymore. Like, I could just do what I can do.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I think about that is a trauma response, right? I don't know if it had to do with the car crash, or if I would imagine that guy was probably, maybe a perfectionist before that happened. It just heightens
Heightens
the
it.
awareness, right? This actually brings me to, like, I don't want to get too clinical, but, like, there's single incident trauma,
Mhm.
right? And those are like the more like understandable. Like we all agree that it's trauma, right? If you're in a car crash, or you witness a murder, or if you're, in a hurricane, or something that's really, it makes sense. It's easier to heal from that. I shouldn't say easier, but it's, if you didn't have trauma in your history, that single incident trauma, if you deal with it, and you actually work through it, you can recover from that because your brain can make sense of it.
Mhm.
The childhood trauma, or the we call it complex trauma, if it's something that's happening, and it's usually relational over and over and over again throughout your life, those feel different, and they don't make sense to us, because we have a tendency to think like, well, I'm an adult and I have a job and I'm capable of doing these things. What's wrong with me? Like there's something, I must be not good enough or whatever, because I can't function emotionally in my day to day. I'm struggling with interactions with other people, or I'm isolating more than I want to, or I'm scared of interactions, or whatever it is. That's more of a complex trauma. And we have thrown around this idea that there are big T traumas and little T traumas, and I think that is outdated. The big T is the understandable traumas. The little T, which is more relational, and like, it's kind of over time, it's more of that complex trauma. It's That is more insidious because it messes with who you think you are. So if you have a parent who is not present in whatever way, as a child, we can only look to the adults around us to make sense of who we are as a person, right? And so if somebody is in an active addiction, or if they are just neglectful in some way, or aggressive in some way, kids don't look at that and say, well, you're a jerk. It's more like, what did I do wrong? There's got to be something wrong with me. We build an adaptive behavior to exist in that. And then you grow up being an adult where you're looking at it saying, look, my dad or my mom or whoever they were fine. Yeah, they had a drinking problem, but they were good people and they were nice to me, and all of that. And then we blame ourselves. And I think that's that kind of like overworking thing. It's like, I'm trying to figure out logically, I need to do something to make myself better.
Okay, now we're getting into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
now we're getting into it.
2.0.
And, you know, I think that's I think that's very deep, because I think there's a lot of denial. And, it's interesting, the people that I have met that have the most trauma will go to, well, they were doing the best they could. Well, they were doing, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's true they were doing the best that it could,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's not true. They weren't doing the best, right? They both could be true at the same time. Like
Yeah.
they could be, there might be times they didn't know and then they knew and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
I have to, I have to ask you about this, this idea of questioning this. And you were talking about how, um, this I gotta phrase this right, because it's hard to actually kind of verbalize this. This idea that you're not safe, but you are safe intellectually. Intellectually, you're safe. No one's coming through the door. No one's going to hurt you.
Hmm.
You're not going to be wounded.
Yeah.
But inside this conflict, when this conflict happens, what are the outward signs of this conflict? Because I
Yeah.
think sometimes people will maybe feel this, but they don't see it. They don't see that in an outward way, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? They
Yeah.
don't that how does that come out in the
So,
outward sense?
yeah. So you're asking, like, how does logically, you're saying, I know I'm fine, but in my body, I don't feel okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
right? So yeah, that, it's interesting. It can come out in a lot of different ways. And that I think this is all, it's important to say that this is all person specific,
sure.
right? It could come out as somebody who, like, I know, like, a lot of people shake their leg or bounce their leg when they're talking, but if somebody's doing it and it's like really intense, and when you start talking about a particular subject, like, you'll see people kind of shift, or but there's other people that, the term dissociation, um, just kind of shutting down. You may see people who can't give you eye contact, and when you're talking about something that involves them and in their concept of self, they may not. It can be really subtle. The more, if you see somebody who is like overly anxious, um, I know someone who talks really fast and apologizes for things all the time. Right away, to me, like, that's historical, right? Because there's no reason for you to be doing that in a conversation with me. You know that I'm a safe space. You know that I'm someone that you can just talk to and you can say whatever you want. I'm a therapist. Or a counselor. I don't judge anybody for anything. After 15 years of doing this, I'm like, I don't have the right to judge anyone about anything. So, so if they are reacting to things in a way that doesn't make sense, or but even in your own body, if you uh feel nervous about something and it doesn't fit the situation where you logically, I'm safe, right? But in your body you feel unsafe, that is something that you should explore, right?
You know, I you said so much, it was, like, hard to verbalize it, to put it out, but I gotta go to the thing that you were talking about, shame.
Okay.
Who you think you are deep down inside, as opposed to guilt or remorse, what you think you've done, right?
Yes.
If we're gonna define it, shame is who you think you are internally.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make a very bold statement here. Before I coached, and even when I was doing a lot of 12-step work, I rarely would ever meet with with a guy that I was sponsoring, or anyway, that did not have shame, misplaced shame. And I
Yeah.
think the one thing that, and I'm gonna comment, I don't wanna be misunderstood here by anybody that's watching, that they shouldn't go to a 12-step group or shouldn't done this. But I do think that, like, one of the missteps, I think the misinterpretations of 12-step is that somehow people that have unplaced shame about who they think they are, that comes from trauma, abuse specifically, I'm gonna say violence, abuse, sexual abuse, that
Yeah.
somehow that they had a role in that, I think keeps people stuck a lot in 12 step. And I think,
Yeah.
like, for me, like, I'm always like, one, no, that's not on this. There is no role you had in being abused,
Mm-mm.
but your role now, your only role in it is what you're going to do with this information that now has come out,
Yeah.
which is trauma oriented. Not to
Yes.
diagnose it, but trauma-oriented, beyond the scope of this. And I'm gonna tell you, my personal thing is, I held on to a lot of stuff that I believed was a character defect out of a misinterpretation of very loving people. They didn't mean me any harm,
Sure. Sure.
but they didn't have the experience in it to understand. I was like, "Dude, that's trauma. That's
Yeah.
nothing. You have no role."
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's complex trauma. That is, when you if you're if a parent isn't emotionally or even physically available, it's tough to say this, but that's neglect, right? Like, if you can't be there for your kid, even if you have the best of intent and you're providing a roof and you're all that, we need that. We all need it. In fact, in the first 3 years, if you don't have your parents, you're not going to make it. You literally can't make it. Um, and it does create this inner world feeling that this is my fault. And I have worked with a lot of people who come into my office, and I will, I this is so I'm just going to say it. I have had a few people who, at first, I was like, I wonder if they're on the autism spectrum, because they never looked at me whenever we were talking, and then I realized over time I had to shift my own ideas about, like, it's shame. It's shame that I can't look you in the eye when we're talking about me. Like, that, and over time I learned to feel that in my body, so I know that that's what that is. It's not, being on the spectrum. But there are a lot of people in their life that wonder, because they're also the type of people, their response to trauma or perceived trauma is to shut down, and so they have somewhat of a flat affect.
You
And
can feel it, Kyle,
yeah.
energetically.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You can once you attune to it and you know it, like, I've worked with people where I'm like, "You know what? From a coaching accountability standpoint, what you really need is like, buddy, that's not your shit.
Yes.
And you just need a big hug,
Yeah.
and this is not and you need to go work on that." Like, because, like, you need to pursue, like, that is your recovery path, because what I found is, and especially with men, I'm gonna make a bold statement here.
Yeah.
What happens is, if you're either become a fighter, you become an abuser, or you try to make difficult people like you.
Yep. Yeah. I'm the latter. I will say that.
So am
I think
I.
it,
I'm
yeah,
the latter too. Try to
it
make
served
difficult
me.
people like you, which is friggin'
Yeah.
insanity, Kyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah. It also makes you codependent, right? Because the only way that you're okay is if somebody else is okay. And so that feeling of, like, and as a therapist, it can be beneficial in my position, but it can also be detrimental if I am only okay if my client is okay. So early on in my career, I had to be really careful of not trying to just fix people, or trying to, one of the things that really hit me was when someone told me I was kind of being a cheerleader, which a lot of people who have experienced complex trauma hate. Um, they said, "Don't take that away from me. That's mine. That feeling that I have, that hurt that I have, that's mine, and I don't like you, you're dismissing it by doing that." And I was like, "Holy cow!" Like, they changed the trajectory of who I am as a counselor from that day on, because they confronted me with it. And so, like, yeah, but that was my stuff coming out. I was trying to help them be okay, you
This is
know?
so this is such a breakthrough, because I know for me, spiritually, I've been saying, I'm very empathic, and doing the lives and having people come up and, crying and looking for some path to recovery, and we're
Hmm.
all just trying to help the best that we can and providing information. A lot of the times I realize is like, "Oh, I've had to become very good at, like, this feeling I'm having, this doesn't belong to me. This isn't mine."
Yeah.
And I think if you've gone through any kind of abuse or trauma, what happens is you believe it's yours. And when you start to wake up to the fact is like, this doesn't belong to me.
Hmm.
This is unauthentic to me. This is not me. This is
Yeah.
something else. And I can choose whether I can let it go. But I think I hear this all the time. Well, it's the only thing I know. It's shit, Kyle, but
Yeah.
it's warm shit and I know it. And if
Yep.
I go beyond this and I let go of this, I am nothingness
Yep.
without the identity of being broken. I'm nothingness.
Yeah. That's the healing, though. Like, I believe that the healing from trauma mirrors in some ways the grief healing, because we're all in denial. Yeah, I'm sometimes still in denial of the things that I've been through in my life. But we have to actually go through it. And some of that is, you've got to break it down and feel like you're nothing, so that you can build yourself up. Now, I know that that's scary. So I don't want to dismiss that. And that's why I think people shouldn't do it alone. you should, in my opinion, you should have a counselor or a therapist who feels good. But also, if it's a coach, I don't care. Just don't do it alone. And a lot of people who have complex trauma, if it's relational, the issue is that they oftentimes don't trust other people. And so they end up pushing people who can be a safe space for them and can support healing. They push them away. And I believe that it can take years and years and years. One of the beliefs of treating complex trauma in therapy is it can take 2 to 3 years, maybe even more, just to build the foundation of trust that person can now be really open with you and share all of the pain that they have that is so there's so much shame and pain and guilt around it. And so, like, we have to learn to be really patient with each other.
Absolutely. This has been such an enlightening episode. Kyle, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
Guys, we're
glad
going
to
to
be
go
here.
quick after the show. So Kyle, hold on here.
Okay.
We're going to put links about how to get a hold of Kyle. Super insightful. And I say, you were talking about coaching, therapy, 12-step. We talked about a lot of stuff here. I say, do it all. I said,
Yeah.
if you're a professional athlete, you wouldn't just show up to the game.
Yeah.
You do it, do what you need to do. Like, do
Yeah.
it all. You might need
Yeah.
therapy, 12-step, coach. You might need it all.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
what you need to do to
Yeah.
get there, because it's definitely worth it.
Absolutely. I agree. And the one thing I will say is get in your body, especially for men. We are trained to use our body as a tool, but we don't get into our emotions. And guys, you don't have to tell anybody that you're getting into your body. You can keep that to yourself if you feel like you need to, right?
I love it. Okay, hold on, Kyle. Guys,
All
thank
right.
you. Thank you so much for this episode. It was great.
Hey, if you like this episode, think about supporting us by becoming a Recovered Life Plus member. At Recovered Life TV, we're not just delivering premium recovery resources, we're empowering you with the knowledge and tools that make a real difference in the quality of your recovery. By subscribing, you gain access to ad-free content, expert insights, exclusive video and audio segments, special projects, plus so much more, all while supporting our mission to spread the recovery message far and wide. Whether you're seeking to deepen your understanding or stay updated on the latest addiction and mental health recovery trends, Recovered Life Plus is for you. Subscribe now and start living your best recovered life. Just go to recoveredlife.tv and become a Plus member today.